Welcome, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Men Who Get It panel. I'm Mike Ritz. I'm the Executive Director of Leadership Rhode Island, and I'm honored to be the moderator again for the R.I.S.E conference for this particular panel for year 3 for me. And I want to thank the R.I.S.E Advisory Council for having the confidence to bring me back and keep bringing me back. I'll keep coming if you keep inviting. I love this conference. So who would have known when I stood among you, 700 of you, at the convention center last year, that the world would have turned out like it has between then and now? Whether it was a loved one, a friend, a job, or a radical shift in our personal or professional lives, our lifestyles, many of us have experienced loss this year. For some of us, it's been a complete roller coaster. I know I entered the year in February, 20 years to the date when I met Elaine and got married this year. That's how I entered this year. Then, after coming back from a magnificent honeymoon in Spain and Gibraltar, very shortly after, Elaine's mother, my mother-in-law, died of COVID. So I want to dedicate my efforts today to Beverly Collins. She is missed. We have indeed felt both joy and grief since we last saw each other. And my heart goes out to everyone who has had these similar trials. This has been a challenging year indeed. But here we are. And we're as resilient as ever. We can't stop, won't stop. R.I.S.E has pivoted to this virtual format. And it's in these times, in particular, these times of crisis, when leadership is needed more than ever. And let's face it, the guys have kind of made a mess of things this year. So I would say women's leadership in particular is needed more than ever. But the guys with us today are different. According to the R.I.S.E committee that selects this panel every year, these guys get it. So if this is your first time experiencing this panel, this isn't mansplaining. I've talked to these fellas. They freely admit they're still learning, but they're doing pretty good. And it's our hope that our discussion today will draw from the insight of these male allies. So I'm going to do a brief introduction, and certainly you can go read their full bios on the website. Travis Escobar is the project manager, public policy at United Way of Rhode Island, and he's also the co-founder of Millennial Rhode Island, a generational network that focuses on inspiring and connecting millennials to live, work, and grow in our state. Bobby Gondola is the executive director of the Community College of Rhode Island Foundation and the college's associate vice president for institutional advancement and college relations. And of course, I have to mention, he's also a College Leadership Rhode Island graduate of 2005. 15 years ago, Bobby, I'm just saying, you're not as young as you used to be. Reggie Jean is the director of the Boston University Upward Bound and Upward Bound Math Science programs. For those of you who don't know, Upward Bound Boston programs work with Boston and Chelsea high school students to help students go to and be successful in college. And last, but certainly not least, Brendan Kane is a principal and partner with Peregrine Property Management, which he oversees the company's day-to-day business operations and facilities management. He's also a 2008 graduate of Leadership Rhode Island's core program. Can't but not mention that. I have asked all of our panels to unmute themselves so that we can have a more free-flowing conversation for the next 50 minutes. So gentlemen, I've delivered a brief professional bio of each of you just now, and I'd like to start our conversation in this discussion by connecting you to the topic of this panel. So this year's R.I.S.E committee selected you. So my first question goes to Travis, and we'll go down the line here. What is the it that you get, or that they say you get, and what or who do you think is really responsible for helping you get it? Hi, Travis.
Hi, Mike, and sorry to hear about the tragedy that you've had with you and your family. And yeah, just glad to be on this panel with you and everyone else here today. Yeah, so, I believe for men who want to be allies for women, you don't get to choose it yourself. Women choose you to be an ally. So I'm grateful to be chosen to be on this panel here today. And uh, I think I get it because I'm aware that I'll never truly get it. But I'll always work to understand the plight of what it means to be a woman in a male dominated society or world. Frank Douglas once said, I believe no man can voice the wrongs and present the demands of women with the skill and effect, with the power and authority of women herself. And I grew up with a strong single mother who is a domestic violence prevention advocate. I've seen and learned from so many experiences of women who unfortunately went through trauma as a result of men. But I've also spent, unfortunately, a lot of time sort of learning from either family members growing up or friends growing up, teenage years, who would talk about or view women as less than, or would talk about having multiple sort of spouses as success. So I felt that I feel that growing up, mostly with women and my mother, I've done a great deal of unlearning toxic masculinity. And I've always took it upon myself to learn and listen as much as I can to sort of be a strong advocate as possible, especially on issues that impact women. So that's why I believe I'm on this panel. Is that I recognize that I don't get it, but I'm always looking to learn, listen, and understand from.
Thanks, Travis. Welcome, Brendan. Good to see you
Oh,
over there.
thank you.
Yeah. So people think you get it. What is this it?
I think I've got to echo Travis's perspective that I would say I'm an exceptional work in progress relative to this, and I certainly a slightly different perspective than Travis relative to the strong women in my life. Coming from a very stable suburban lifestyle, mom stay at home for a long time, president of PTA type movie. Flight attendant when there were stewardesses, but was an incredibly strong woman to the point where, in 76 on the ask of Senator John Chafee at the time, coming to the House and asking to run for state representative, did so in a Democratic state as a Republican, ran and won, recognizing she couldn't get a lot done as a Republican in Rhode Island, switched parties and ran and won again for a total of 10 years as a state representative. So the model behavior we had, both from a mother who cared and loved, but also a woman who was driven and hard charged for what she wanted. And that was not only for herself, but for her family, her constituents, et cetera. So we saw this kind of throughout our lives. All of the Kanes married the equal of that woman. And I think we try every day to continue to kind of strengthen the foundation that my mom, Lorraine Kane, who has since passed last year, has given us and taught us to work at it every day. I think, if you ask the same question to me at 18 and 19 and 20, I would not have been a guy who gets it. Not to say the foundation wasn't there, but I would say maybe the attitudes were different. My personal attitudes were different. I certainly had different goals back then relative to women than I do now, clearly. So I would say the get it part has been a work in progress, and something where what I've learned was the ability, women and men, when you're engaging in discourse that's fair, respectful, men, woman, religious beliefs, minority based, If you're both coming at it with a mutual level of respect, I think the conversations are certainly much more powerful and garner much greater results. So I would try every day. I guess the reason why, or what I believe the reason to be why I get it is that I've chaired many boards with diversified board members, and I've treated everyone equally, respectfully. Their voices were heard and heard openly, not always accepted, but always heard, understood, and appreciated. So I think it's that ability to communicate with all people, women and men in this case, equally, and without diminishing a role, or in some cases highlighting a role because of who or what they are, right? So I think it's that universal kind of consistency in my behavior that would have me, in this case, get it.
Thanks, Brendan. Reggie, he starts talking about Rhode Island politics. I'm like, I better go to, somebody out in the Boston area before we get bogged down here. But Reggie, I'm same question to you, but I'm also very interested in the fact that you have a lot of influence on young folks. And so there's probably a certain way you're setting the example that, I don't have to think about in my daily life, perhaps, because I don't have young people around me all the time. And I'd be curious to hear a little bit about that too, Reggie.
Well, thanks, Mike. I appreciate, again, the committee, the conference, all the organizers for this immense conference. DJ Valentina got me going, so I'm ready to roll here. And I know it's the times that we talked about, Mike, and the loss of your family. People are going through these things. So my condolences to you and your family. It's events like these that keep people going. So I appreciate being invited to this. When I found out that I was selected to do this, for months ago, I've been looking forward to this day. So I appreciate it. And in terms of getting it, I think about throughout my life the different lessons that I've learned, and so part of that was the good, the bad, and the mistakes I've made. And so I've made plenty of mistakes in my life. One benefit for me was that I was always willing to pay attention to what I've learned from those mistakes, so that they wouldn't happen again at an early age. And in terms of the good, I was blessed. My grandmother was a strong force in the family, the matriarch. My mom, also strong. The best manager of people that I know and I've ever met is my mom. And then, I'm a twin, so I have a twin sister. And so the stuff that sort of we would go through and discuss and talk about, and I learned firsthand from someone my age in living the same household how things were different, right? And so, when people would look at me and look at my sister or treat my sister or treat me, it was sometimes just different, right? And I couldn't put, why to the difference back then, but the older I got, I was able to see more about why there is a difference. And then similar to what Brandon talked about, the good also occurred in my high school friends and my professional friends. I was blessed by diversity, right? I was blessed by diversity in my life. My high school was diverse. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. So talking to people and being comfortable around different people, even strong-willed people, right? And I was lucky because there was some high school students that I had, college students that were my classmates, strong women, right? And if they heard you say something incorrect, they corrected you, right? And so I benefited from those conversations and those times. And then now as a professional, working with Upward Bound and the TRIO programs and the different state associations and the regional associations, trying to, better who I am, but also make sure that the people around me are able to be their best selves without having to take pause in who they are, just for the sake of somebody else's benefit. And then the bad, again, I made mistakes, and I grew up, life was not a crystal staircase where I grew up, in Newkirk, Flatbush area of Brooklyn. In the 80s, there was the crack epidemic and drugs and alcohol and all this. So I watched, a lot of people who should have been successful, should have had a better life, not be able to do that. So I learned from that and made sure that I could learn from those mistakes. And all those experiences helped me when I work with students, when I work with the upper bound students, being able to share my own perspective, being able to share, my own life experiences, not to say to them, I'm exactly like you, I know what you're going through, but just to give them another perspective of, this is someone who's taking the time to talk to me. And Mike, you mentioned that, you don't have a role like, I do, but you do, right? Because you work with young people, you've known young people, you talk to young people, and even though it's not an official mentor position that we all have all the time, when young people talk, they listen, even when they act like they're not listening, right? And they pay attention. So when we are modeling for the young, or anybody, and when we take that time to pause and talk to them and listen to them, interact with them, then we can build that trust. And then with that trust, we can impart information to them that they're gonna take and receive in an important way. So in terms of working with the students, I'm blessed to work with them. I learn from them more than I could teach them. But I also tell them that, life is a process, right? And so in terms of getting it, right, I think maybe I was chosen because it's clear when I talk to people, when I work with people, that I've never quite gotten it yet, right? And so being someone who's selected as someone who gets it, a man who gets it, means that I'm someone who is always trying to get it. And I look at my blind spots and try and fill those blind spots as they develop, so that, I can continue to try and be my best self. And I let other people do that too.
That's great. Yeah, I got to say, my 22-year-old daughter, she may not think I get it right now, but sometimes it's up and down. Sometimes I get it, sometimes I don't, but I'm trying to figure that out. I hear you, Reggie. I hear you. Bobby, all three panelists so far, and I would include myself if I were to mention this, had these women in their lives that were very strong and served as role models and nurtured us along differently. It's interesting to think about whether, if you don't have that, how do you end up on a panel like this? Do you end up an ally? But I think you've had a similar background and experience with your own family. Is that right?
Mike, thank you so much. And I appreciate the way that my fellow panelists have opened. And good afternoon, ladies. I wish I was looking at you, but here I am looking in this camera here. So yes, as Reggie was speaking, I was like, check. It's amazing. We're meeting for the first time via this panel, and yet we've had very similar female influencers in our life. And I think what I've learned from them and what I appreciate is that the fellow, my colleagues here have said, recognition for continuous learning. I believe it's about exemplifying empathy, recognizing privilege. And I think in some way, every single person that spoke before me said something to the effect of owning up to mistakes. And I think, making mistakes is part of the process. And I think what I would add to that is without making an excuse. So that's actually really hard for me. And anyone here who knows my husband, he can attest to that. But I've been really blessed to have strong women in my life. I was raised in part by my paternal grandmother, strong matriarchal Boston-based Italian family. I'm the eldest of 3 sisters. And so that sharing a bathroom with them in an apartment for most of my childhood was a big part of balancing and learning how I show up with women and with women in my life. And now this is where it gets dangerous because I'm going to stand up and you might see that I have shorts on because we're on a Zoom format, but I have to get a so behind me is just a bunch of treasures from life and the world. And this is my mom that I just grabbed here. She's washing dishes here. And this picture is a picture that she says, I was washing dishes after opening our presents, the pajamas that Bob gave me. Bob, my dad, Big Bob, not Little Bob. But I share this picture of my mom, this Polaroid. I guess I really am not as young as I think I am. To share that I've had really incredible personal female influences in my life at an early age. And then I've, as an adult, have had strong female bosses, mentors, advisors, and folks that have been key to, where I'm at and what I'm doing. So it's certainly a privilege to be asked to even show up on this stage in this format, and really looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, thanks, Bobby. Now, see, in virtual format, you can just go and grab an item and pull it right into we couldn't do that if we were in the convention center. So it's got some advantages. So I'm going to hit you up with something timely right now. And I'm doing this because I'm hoping that the people that are attending, that are listening to this, will keep these numbers in their minds throughout the next year. And I'm also, of course, wanting to get your reactions, gentlemen, about this data. And I'm wondering, are there any kind of preventable measures or solutions that we could take, that could be taken to sort of, overcome these hurdles? So Leadership Rhode Island's Deputy Director, Michelle Carr, pointed out this study to me recently prior to this session. The Women in the Workplace 2020 study, which is by McKinsey in partnership with leanin.org, which is an organization that tracks the progress of women in corporate America. They surveyed 40,000 people from 317 companies from June to August. And they found that COVID-19 is magnifying workplace inequalities. 2 million women could leave the workforce. 2 million. Why? Here's what they say. They say 54% of senior level women feel consistently exhausted, 42% of mothers with young children, and 40% of Black women. This is compared to 31% of men overall. That mothers are working double shifts. 4 in 10 mothers spend over 3 hours per day on household responsibilities in addition to their jobs. 1 in 4 mothers worry that their performance is judged negatively due to their parental duties versus 1 in 10 fathers. That's a huge difference. 44% of women versus 70% of men in dual career heterosexual couples say that household labor is split evenly. 44% of women versus 70% of men. This has led to 1 in 4 senior level women that have considered leaving the workforce or slowing down since the beginning of COVID-19 and the crisis here in America. So again, this study speculates that 2 million women could leave the workforce, which would be about $180 billion in earning potential that could be lost. So gentlemen, I'm curious, are these figures surprising to you? And are you seeing things being done differently in workplaces that could prevent this sort of workforce exodus? And, whether you are or not, what do you think might be able to be done? And I'll throw it out there, and whoever wants to grab that question, have at it. But this seems pretty serious to me, and we're right in the thick of it.
Yeah, I'll jump in as a capitalist, I guess, for lack of a better term.
Right, the opening, Brendan.
Yeah. I mean, I was, listen, I'm living it. My wife's a teacher. I've got, good or bad, I've got grown children at this point, 20 and 23. One, oldest is a daughter at grad school. Youngest is at Providence College, currently locked down at the Marriott Orm Street. But, I would say, she's doing, I'm witnessing her workload as they're trying to understand what this all means relative to, I'll speak specifically to my wife's work. They're doing virtual, but they're learning on the go. They're 2 days on, 1 day off, 2 days on. So to your point of, in a profession that has a ton of women teaching, it's, as you're inventing things, it's consuming not only mental energy, physical energy. And then to your point, traditionally it would be the mom who does the house cleaning and the so on. So I would say in real time, back to some of the earlier comments, I would be doing my part every day to fill that gap, and whether that be emotional gap to help just feel supportive and listened, so she feels listened to, but also the physical portion of doing things. Not that I didn't do them already. I do my part every day to make it easier for her, to enable her to do her job. And in the workforce, my own employees, which is very diversified, men, women, so on. I would say to all my employees, not just women specific, that listen, we hired adults. If you need time because of X, because of the children, because of school, because of something at home, you just got to be open and transparent, and that time will be allowed. As long as our work's getting done to the level of expectation, we're adults here, and the limits of your time. Do your best to satisfy. If you have to do X, do X, and we're not going to hold you, babysit you to that, or babysit to your job. But it's a hard balance as a business owner, entrepreneur. It's a hard balance. I would see the stresses from this pandemic and the lockdowns to be digested very differently between men and women, but both equally valued and equally stressful, equally. It's taking its toll, as you can see by the numbers. Fatigue is setting in across the board. It's impacting relationships at home, kids' relationships, certainly challenges with abuse and so on in these times. So I would say, my approach has been very, again, universal. Men, women is, and at home, do my part to fill that gap, to ensure that that she gets the time allotted to do her job to the level she wants to do it. And then at work, to make sure that all people feel equally liberated to make the decisions necessary, important to their family, that I believe that allow them to do the job better in the long term.
Yeah, just curious, Brendan, and then Bobby had his hand raised, but because of COVID, have you had a different kind of conversation as an employer to make this really evident, or have you changed policies in the workplace, or has this sort of always been the policy anyway?
No, so I would say it's always been the policy. Again, a lot easier when you're not dealing with this level of stress, universal stress, families, women, men. But I would say, we send out for the last, it's something like 30 weeks now, we send out a Monday message and a Friday message, one, safety and concerns and motivational stuff, as the challenges this means to you and your family. And do not hesitate to raise your hand to make sure those things get set. So I think we did summer hours this summer to make sure people have the time off necessary to satisfy some of those things.
Yeah,
so
thanks.
We carried that through, the last week until Columbus Day. So
yeah, thanks, Brendan. I was just
yes,
curious.
Definitely
about
more
that.
pronounced now than prior.
Yeah, Bobby, I saw you raise your hand.
Yeah, Mike, I wanted to answer your question directly, which was, did this McKinsey study surprise you? And my answer is absolutely not. And so we know that women, especially women of color, were already experiencing equity before the pandemic. So the pandemic has only widened the severity of that gap. And I appreciate that you referenced, Mike, the study from McKinsey. I actually read it last night. And to Brendan, the capitalist, if we continue down the path that we're going down right now, just to make this a money argument, we will lose $1 trillion of global GDP from the lost wages and earning and contribution of female workers. And that's globally according to the McKinsey study. Brendan also mentioned the industries. He mentioned teaching, teaching, nursing. These are industries that are thriving where women are now. They've never been more important to us in society. And so it's, what are the industries that have been negatively impacted by an ongoing pandemic and the recession? Well, it's hospitality, it's service, it's retail. And that's where women have a majority share of employment in those industries. So of course, I'm not surprised by the negative impact of the pandemic. Then you add on the layer of childcare and child responsibilities, which more likely women are maintaining in a household. This is a crisis. And I think to answer the question even further, what policies are being done or what action is being taken, I don't think people are paying attention to it, because I think we've been too busy trying to figure out how to transition our existing work to remote. How are we, in my case, how are we as a college delivering classes to online and the socially distanced and appropriately conducted in person? It's, I think for anyone, I would imagine figuring out how to move your business during this time, or move whatever it is your operation is, whether it's a nonprofit or public entity, would have presented a challenge. And so I think Brendan went to one of the examples, which flexibility on my team, that would be the first place I would go, where I have predominantly women serving with me at the college and on the foundation team. And I also think that there are some simple things that we can do around support that come to like everyday issues. So I was thinking about this as I was getting ready for this Zoom call. I actually put some thought into what sweater am I going to wear today. I actually have to do my hair, but I think that we still maintain these expectations for women that they're to show up a certain way, and we expect them to look a certain way. And I can admit that I carry incredible privilege, and that there are times where my hair is out of control. I haven't cut it since February, and I know I can go get it.
Right? Really?
I haven't cut it since February. I won't show you how long it is, but that's why it's back. And so that's the thing I have figured out, and I have a very easy way. If I have a call and I'm meeting with one of our donors, I could be show ready by throwing on a dress shirt and flipping my hair back, and it's wet and I'm good to go. And we don't allow women that same privilege. And so I think we have to be aware of that on a Zoom call when you're on this platform. I throw on a hat sometimes because my hair is a mess and I don't want to deal with it. How would a woman be perceived if she put a hat on during a business meeting or in class or whatever the format might be?
I'd like to chime in
Go ahead,
with the stat. Women provide 100% of the human population. So, but does corporate America, does our government, the people making the laws, the people that are making the programs, actually recognize that, right? So Bobby, when you mentioned childcare, especially for hourly wage workers, for women that have to juggle 2 jobs, I can't, if I were to have a child, it'd be a struggle to afford childcare. And my partner make decent money, but it would be a struggle. I know a lot of individuals that struggle with student loan debt and having to do childcare. And I've had some friends that have decided to take the route of childcare is expensive, I'm going to stay home. And we've never. I think corporate America. I think our government needs to be more supportive of women in the workforce. So, when we talk about, have we ever witnessed women marginalized in the workplace? It goes from the structure, the system that we have in place of this country. So just as Bobby put it so well, there's no surprises in that report. And, hopefully, corporate America, hopefully, in future elections, there could be more self-reflection in terms of what we should do as a society to make sure women are supported in the workforce, make sure that families at the end of the day are supported in the workforce. My mom's a child care worker, has been a child care worker most of her career. You know, I don't think she's ever made more than $30,000. So we also talk about the workers that are in that industry taking care of children, and they're not even paid an adequate wage. So yeah, I would hope that our country more recognizes the importance of the contributions of women in terms of we're all here on this panel, everyone viewing, because they were birthed by a woman.
Thanks, Travis. Reggie, I think I saw you.
Yeah, and the study that you bring up, Mike, I definitely believe it. Ruthie and I, my wife Ruthie, we talked about that study when it came out, and you know what it says for societal wise, but also in terms of management as well. And so, you know, part of what, you know, in terms of treatment in the workplace, I like to think of things in terms of my sphere of influence. And, you know, we can influence DC, once every 2 years, once every 4 years in terms of elections, local elections. But in terms of how we work with and help set policy within our own institutions, you know, for me at BU, within my unit, within my department, that has more impact on the people I work with. So when the pandemic started, you know, it was people were just trying to survive, right? People grabbing toilet paper, trying to survive, and that's what people were going on at home. And then a lot of times, you know, in terms of what was trying to be done at the workplace, it was trying to continue things as normal in a very abnormal time. And so it was important not only to let it be a policy where if there's things that happen, you know, you do what you have to do, look out for your personal care and all that, but it has to be expressed. Like, I can't assume because I'm a man that another man who's a part of my staff that I supervise is gonna assume that I can read his mind, right? And I can't read the minds of my female staff, and female bosses can't read the mind of their female staff. So it's important as a supervisor, as a boss, that you say to your staff, hey, it's a crazy time. You know, do what you have to do at home. If you have to leave the Zoom call because your 6-year-old needs you to get help with algebra, well, 6-year-old's not doing algebra, but you get the idea, right?
Reggie's got smart kids.
Right?
So
we have to give permission to our staff and say, things are not gonna go normal. I don't expect perfection, right? I expect you to do your best, but there are some times when you're not gonna be able to do it. Let me know, and we're gonna figure it out together, because we're a team. We can't just say, hey, we're a team, we'll be great together when times are good. The structure of the team, and a team gets tested when things are bad, right? So in terms of the study and what it means for the workplace, it's making sure as managers that we're communicating, you know, what our expectations are with an empathetic lens, but also trying to make sure that our where we work can hear some of the concerns so that they can adjust their policies and expectations accordingly. We can't change everything, but we can change the circumstances around us much easier.
yeah, thanks, Reggie. I want to. We've got a few minutes, and I want to end this with giving you the opportunity to talk about maybe what we've missed here. So, you know, it'll be a little bit more succinct. You know, what should women know about men who get it, if you think there's anything unsaid there? And what more would you like to know about women to become a better ally? I'm going to throw that question out there, but before I do, I got to mention, because I know there are a lot of men watching, and you gentlemen here, I'm also on the board selection committee for the Girl Scouts of Southern New England, and they're looking for men to serve. It's one of these strange opposites where they are looking for men for these boards. So I'm going to throw it out there. And if anybody's interested in trying to help the Girl Scouts of Southern New England and serve as a positive male role model in a number of ways, but more importantly, bring some strategy and different perspective, they're looking for it. So come see me. So what aren't we talking about, gentlemen? What should women know about men who get it, or what more would you like to know to become a better ally?
I would think the, I'm sorry,
silence.
guys. No, I would think the, from and the panelists certainly touched on this, but, I would think, allowing women their voice, right? Allowing women to participate equally. And I think when you look at the root of this goes back generations, hundreds of years beyond us. This separation was started and cultivated. And I think this panel clearly is doing their best to move that needle the other way. And I think women, you need to, have the talking stick, and they need to be able to speak openly, transparently, without repercussions. And I think only when we hear their voice in a meaningful, respectful manner on both sides, men and women, do we get to common ground, do we get to move the needle. COVID certainly has brought some of these things to light relative to impacts on family. But I think, everyone's going to raise their hand openly and listen respectfully to both sides of this coin. As a man who kind of gets it, I've got female friends, I've got a diversity of career paths on all of those friends. I think surround yourself with smart, intelligent men, women, race, religion, you're just a better person. So I think the more we do that as a culture, the more we solve some of the larger issues, including this one, across the board.
Thanks, Brendan.
Mike, I think that it's also normalizing equity in everything that you do. And being an ally I'm not an ally because I claim to be, or I'm self-proclaimed. I'm an ally if women have given me that distinction, or I've earned that title. And I think it's important also to recognize that being an ally isn't doing anybody favors. So being an ally is calling out privilege, calling out inequity, calling out when something is said that is misogynist or misaligned with your values or the way we should behave in society. And it's never too late to identify and right or wrong. So I think about sometimes I hear something, and it's possible that, I'm a gay man. It's hard for me to fit in sometimes with a bunch of straight guys that someone cracks a joke. And there might be a time where I'm silent and uncomfortable saying exactly what I think in that moment, or I have to think about it. Something just happened and I'm driving home and I'm like, oh, I should have said something. And so recognizing that we're going to have those moments, and it's never too late to go back and revisit something and say, hey, I was thinking about this. This was a wrong, and I want you to understand that. I think that's really, really important. Yeah, I'll end there.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Bobby. Any other final words here, gentlemen? Travis?
Mike, I think to answer your question in terms of what women should know about men who get it, is that we're imperfect and we're trying, always learning and listening. And in terms of, I guess specifically in terms of what, in terms of becoming a better ally, I as a co-founder for Millennial Rhode Island, always looking to think about sort of like our future of our state. How do we reimagine the workplace, our culture, in terms of better supporting women? I can talk about policies for universal childcare and a lot of that, but there are women that choose not to have families, right? But there still are inequities that exist in our system for them to potentially not advance in whatever career they choose. So how do we rethink supporting women in the workforce or in general in our society is always something I'd be willing to learn more about, especially in my role as a quote unquote leader, or as my role in on any public policy influence that I have in the state.
Thank you, Travis. And final words. We got a couple of minutes, Reggie.
Sure, yeah. To echo what Travis said in terms of, and just underscore it, what women should know about quote unquote men who get it is that we don't get it, right? It's a continual thing that we're trying to get, right? It's like happiness, right? Sometimes there's no, you don't get there. It's your constant pursuit of it and putting things in your life that make you happy, that get you closer. So in terms of answering that question, it's a continual process. I think what happens a lot of times is that men and women experience things differently, and we talked about the stats of employment, right? And so it's not on the reason we perceive things differently often is because how we think other people perceive us, right? And so for my wife and I, we share the same schedule. We have 2 daughters, twin girls, but the way that she perceives her role as a mom is different from how I perceive my role as a dad. And so societal expectations will mess with how we our mental health a lot of times as well. So we have to give women, men, all of us permission to make mistakes, seek out help when they need it as well. And then finally, we're all in this together, right? And it's because of diversity, again, and surrounding yourself with people that are different from you, sometimes people who disagree with you, right? That's the way to better yourself and better your organization and better the people around you.
Excellent. I can't say it better than that. Thank you, gentlemen, for your time. We're all in this crazy busy landscape that is this COVID-19 world. But I tell you, this conference is always inspiring, virtual or not. Here we are. And I hope, please, we'll be in person next year, and I'll get invited back, and I'll see you guys there. So thank you very much, gentlemen. And
Thanks, guys. Best of luck.
Yeah.
You too.